InnerQuest explores various pathways through which you can connect with the infinite wisdom of the universe and apply it to personal, professional, and spiritual growth. This program, featuring accomplished practitioners, educators, and authors, is provided by Infinity Foundation, an innovative center for holistic studies and research. We invite you to share this journey with us.
Hello, welcome to InnerQuest. My name is Jay Stone, your host for today, and our guest is Julie Tallard Johnson. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Julie is the author of 9 books, including The Wheel of Initiation and Spiritual Journaling. She is also a transpersonal counselor and consultant who works with groups and individuals to transform negative or habitual states through personal inquiry, meditation, and thought transformation. My first question, Julie, is what is a transpersonal counselor?
Well, I'll answer that by saying that when somebody comes in for counseling, they're often very self-absorbed and very involved in some particular issue or something in their life, and it seems to kind of have taken over. And as a transpersonal counselor, I don't focus so much on the one issue or the one pathology, but work with somebody in a more holistic context that everything takes place within a context and within a lot of different causes and conditions. And so we look at the whole context of an experience rather than just focusing in on like a pathology or one issue. And it's never, we don't isolate the person. So when you work with somebody, it's really about working within that person's system, both their psychophysical system, but also their environmental
So you're not
system.
judging the person's behavior, just how that behavior fits in their system and what to change internal.
Right.
Now, I've heard the concept internal family systems. Is that similar to what you do?
I'm familiar with that too. What I would say more is that when you think of in terms of, you've probably heard the Heart Sutra in Buddhism, or what's called dependent arising. It's the idea that nothing happens in isolation. There's always many, many causes and conditions that go into anything happening. And so the person might not even have any awareness about what the main cause or condition or causes and conditions are to what's arising in their life. So also transpersonal counseling really helps use different techniques to really help break through the self-absorption that we all tend to have.
Okay. Now you're going to be teaching some classes at Infinity Foundation?
Yes.
And what are the classes you're going to teach?
The class I'm going to be teaching is on spiritual journaling, and it's using journaling as a method of inquiry, personal investigation, also opening up to the transpersonal concepts of, what are the different things that are going on in my life, where would I like some changes or transformation.
Now, let's see if I understand transpersonal. Transpersonal means to go beyond the personal to
not
God, a higher power, nature.
Yeah, nature, something beyond yourself. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm going to hold up. I'm going to hold up your book here.
Okay.
And the subtitle. Let's see what the subtitle is. Writing Your Way to Independence.
Right.
Why did you choose that title?
Right. So that particular book is for young adults. So and it's based on my adult classes that I've taught over the years for on spiritual journaling. But we reframe this for young adults, although the book can be used for adults as well, and many do use it. So writing your way to independence is the idea, too. It's also very transpersonal, this idea that you can figure out for yourself how to move through your life, not have to... I guess I lost my train of thought.
Okay. Well, let's say if somebody comes to you privately or one of your classes and they're journaling, how will their journaling style change once they take your class?
How their journaling style would change is that they would find ways that they could use their journal one to live more intentionally. I work a lot with intentions, developing an intention, personal intention, also methods of writing intuitively, so that's very personal. Spiritual journaling really is about finding your own personal path of writing and inquiry. So there's lots of different basic tools that they'll be given to be able to use their journal as a way both to do some personal investigation, but also to open up more to their creativity.
Now, do you recommend people share their journals with friends, family members?
I recommend that they don't write for that purpose in a journal, that the journal is, I consider a journal like a temple. It's a place, very sacred, holy place that you go. And so after you've written it, you can decide if you want to share something. But I would think of it in terms of praying or meditating with your higher power or your higher self, and then deciding whether or not it's something you want to share. All my books that I've written are a result of my journaling. And so I go back to my journals and, harvest things from my journals.
Well, it's nice to hear you practice what you preach.
Yeah.
How many minutes a day do you journal?
I journal in the morning as part of my meditation practice. It can be anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour. And that's a distinction between journaling and then writing for my book, although we're writing specifically for a book. But so when people are journaling, one thing I do suggest is that you always title and date your material, so you can always go back and reference it if you want.
Do you recommend journaling longhand or on a computer?
I do recommend that. Yes.
Why?
One is it helps in terms of the neural pathways in our psychophysical system. It really helps integrate what you're writing. It also works with the more creative hemisphere of the brain, so it ignites more of that element in us, the creativity, the imagination.
And what would you say to a spouse, a partner, a parent who is going to snoop at somebody's journal?
Shame on you. No shame here. I don't use shame. Shame on you.
Yeah.
Well, there's also a belief that if you leave your journal out to be read, and somebody happens upon it, there might be something there that you wanted them to discover. As far as teenagers, because I work a lot with young adults and teenagers, I do not recommend snooping through their, material. It's personal, unless you really think it's a life-threatening issue. Then there's no rules.
Yeah.
No rules apply.
Okay. And what age did you start journaling?
Around 16. It's also around the age I started consulting the I Ching, and they went hand in hand. I basically grew up in a more spiritual family. There was no religion or spirituality, but there wasn't anything else to take its place either. I mean, there was no inquiry into what are we doing here or what are you about. So I was really in search of some kind of guidance and discovered the I Ching, and it's recommended that you journal as you consult the I Ching, so that those two started together and my meditation practice started at the age of 16 too.
And how many minutes a day do you meditate, or how many times?
On good days, so I tell people I've been meditating since I was 16, but if it was every day, I'd probably be floating above my chair right now, but and I'm not at all. So I typically 20-minute Vipassana or mindfulness meditation a day, and then I do other forms of meditation, but my main practice is the mindfulness practice.
Good. We had Infinity Foundation sponsor John Kabat-Zinn.
Oh, yes, that's great. The
Zen.
Father almost of bringing mindfulness meditation.
Yeah,
too.
wonderful man. And when he was in Chicago, I got time to spend. I spent alone with him, and he told me he was doing a research project, mindful meditation at University of Wisconsin.
Yep.
Yeah, and
lots
actually,
of research going on there.
Yeah, a lot, and a lot of other universities and clinics throughout the world. So, have you gone back and looked at the journals you wrote at age 16?
Yes, some of them are really boring, pieces of boring, but actually the most exciting parts are where I consulted the I Ching and the relationship I started developing with the I Ching, and probably everybody on this, watching this knows the I Ching, but it's the ancient Chinese oracle. But also, I did use quotes. I quoted, from my journals in my teen books. So like spiritual journaling does have, you know, quotes from a couple entries from my old journals.
And so when you teach this class at Infinity, are you going to include the I Ching as part of the class?
I'll probably have it with me, and then if people want to know how, what I can teach is how to use whatever oracle somebody might use, how to use your journal in consulting your oracle.
Okay, and what other oracles are there besides the I Ching?
Of course, there's nature, which is one I highly recommend in all my books, you know, and doing medicine walks or talking to a tree or listening to a tree. So there'd be journaling with that. There's the tarot, of course. I don't know a lot about the tarot, but
the cards.
The tarot cards. But you know, there's lots of medicine cards out there now in different ways too. But my favorite is the I Ching, because that in itself for me is transpersonal, and it also deals with thought transformation in terms of it really. It's not connected to any religion either, so it really allows you to investigate different ideas and paths. You don't have to be of any particular faith.
Now, do you have any children?
Yes, I have one daughter. She's
Okay.
here,
Oh.
15.
Okay, and have you encouraged her to journal?
I have, and she goes off and on with it.
And so what have you learned now as a parent who's encouraged her daughter to journal?
Well, even actually more than journaling, I encourage her to follow whatever her pursuits are, and her pursuit is more, she's an artist, she's, you know, she draws.
A visual artist?
Yes, and she's very, very good.
And could people add drawings in their journal?
Oh, absolutely. Matter of fact, what I recommend, and any of you out there who are going to come to the class, I recommend you bring a blank journal. It's more like an art, you know, book. Blank journal with no lines, because I use mandalas, I use, you know, different
And our
methods of
audience
writing.
may not know what a mandala is.
Oh, mandala is a medicine wheel, circle.
Okay, and the different aspects in the mandala can represent different parts of ourselves.
It can,
or,
yep, and
life.
we can create different, I use different types of mandalas, and you can create your own personal mandala, which is, it can be fun, a word mandala. So yeah, I tend to use a lot of mandalas in my work. And again, that's transpersonal too, because the idea of a mandala, a circle, a medicine wheel, gives a concept of how everything is interrelated and connected. And each person who works with the mandala in the spiritual journal can discover things that are interrelated in their life. And there's ways to see what might need to be removed and what things you might want to strengthen in your life.
Now, what about like children with autism or behavioral problems? Do you think journaling will be benefit for those children?
I can't. I'm not with autism. With certain levels of autism, and there's so many different levels. I'd say yes, because it's a focusing process. Actually, spiritual journaling is a form of meditation. It's a different type of meditation, but it's a form of meditation. It's research has shown that it benefits people who self-abuse, teenagers in particular, who self-abuse, cut themselves or burn themselves. That's on the rise.
Well, and also I would say eating disorders.
It's very good for, it's research has shown that it's very good for eating disorder and any kind of eating disorder.
Yeah. And what about, you know, you call it the writing your way to independence, but what about finding one's self-image? Because I know a lot of young people with eating disorders also have a self-image problem.
Right. So my belief is that we inherited everything we needed somehow is within us. There's so much. There's a well of information, probably that came from wherever we originated from.
Or DNA.
Yeah, and our
16
DNA.
generations.
There's so much to access, and that journaling allows the young adults and adults to access that. I mean, people always go away amazed from some very simple techniques of spiritual journaling of what they've harvested from their own self. And so it's always fun to watch that and witness that.
Now, you mentioned the wheel, the medicine wheel, but you call this book here the Wheel of Initiation. Can you explain the title?
Sure. The Wheel of Initiation is based on a course that I've taught over the years called the Initiation Course. And the wheel that you see there, by the way, that's a local Wisconsin artist who did that work, is you enter in the south. So it's a process, it's a spiritual pilgrimage.
Marie, can you get a close-up of this? Yeah, and
so you enter the wheel in the south, which is where the horse is, and you ride the horse of intention, you could say. And then you ride you take your intention on your spiritual pilgrimage through the wheel, and you enter the west, which is where the thunder being is, the thunderbird, and that's where you really start shaking up things and deciding what's been causing you problems, what needs transformation. That's the direction, you could say, of transformation. And then you go into the direction of the north, which is where the blue bear is with the stars, and that's the direction of contemplation, connection with the divinity, your source of divinity. And then you enter the east, which is the wolf with the spiral on it, and that's the direction of initiation. And so it's personal spiritual initiation. So it's a personal process, a pilgrimage, where you initiate depending on what your intention is.
And once we finished one cycle, is this the cycle for entire life, or is this we go through a cycle?
Ideally, but you go through it once like you would, going to Mecca. But
Yeah.
it's the beautiful part about both spiritual journaling and work like the Wheel of Initiation is you use it and transform in the context of your life, so you don't have to leave home.
And what are some of you mentioned that before the show that you've written 9 books and you've got a 10th one you're working on. What are some of your other books about?
So I have several books for teenagers and young adults. One, The Thundering Years, Rituals and Sacred Wisdom for Teens. That is the one that the Dalai Lama contributed to, which I feel really good about.
How did you meet up with the Dalai Lama?
Well, I was part of the Tibetan community in Minneapolis,
Mm-hmm.
and and he's just a nice guy, He's a very nice man, and he said yes.
Did you know Wayne Teasdale?
No, that name sounds familiar.
Well, I interviewed Wayne.
Oh, okay.
He's a Catholic. Well, was a Catholic priest. He's since passed on, but he's written books and so the Dalai Lama wrote the foreword to his book. And I just, before the show, I asked him, "Oh, did you ever meditate with the Dalai Lama?" He says, "Yeah, Dalai Lama and I teach meditation classes all over the world."
Seriously?
Yeah, and he was just so humble and matter-of-fact about it. But I think because you have such a connection to Dalai Lama, you would love Wayne's books.
Oh, okay, I'll look that up.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, so you're talking about the book in which the Dalai Lama contributed.
Yeah. So that's the book, and actually a lot of different people contributed to it. It's...
So are you like an editor in this book?
No, I wrote it, but I wanted other people to contribute because it's multicultural. They actually won a multicultural award for books.
And by the way, are all your books multicultural?
Yes, that's very important to me. That's transpersonal too. In that way, anybody can access it, unless they have their bias coming into it.
Well, aren't you trained as a social worker to respect other cultures and not impose your beliefs upon them?
Yeah, I would say yes to that. Yeah. That's true. That's a good part of my training.
Yeah. By the way, I've never met the Dalai Lama, but he seems so childlike, in a good way.
Yeah. Very approachable.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you want to elaborate on some of your other books?
The next one that's coming, can I mention the next one that's coming out?
Of course.
So I just received the okay from the publisher and it's tentatively called The Meaning Makers and the Science of Living an Inspired Life. And it's all about creativity and living inspired and following your dream and your bliss as...
and who's the target market for that book?
That's adults too, so...
Okay, good. And maybe you can just answer this question. Do you have any idea why adults lose their creativity and intuition?
That's a good one. I would actually say that we lose it earlier on, that certain things happen where we become, what we lose it to in a nutshell is our habitual self. Mm-hmm. And all my practices for adults are really about breaking that hold that the habitual self has on us as a result of our past, basically. So we tend to replay our past over and over. We get in a groove, and our habitual self is really hard to shake.
Well, and it's really painful if you're in a relationship and both both oneself and the partner are in those same
Yeah,
patterns.
yes, definitely.
And so you think it takes a transpersonal experience or a creative experience to break the patterns?
I do, and there's ways to help that happen. There's certain methods that are evidence-based, you could say, that help us shake that up. Because just recent research has shown that, you know, we are definitely hardwired to our pain stories, what I refer to as our pain stories. Mm-hmm. Eckhart Tolle refers to them as pain bodies, mm-hmm. but pain stories, these themes we carry around with us. And so we tend to repeat those, and those are hardwired because we tend to, you know, fight and flight. You know, we're geared for fight and flight. And so there's certain techniques that allow us to break those, and we can change the hardwiring so that we can access our more creative
Well, I think there's
self.
a purpose that we more likely recall painful memories than pleasurable ones. And I think we retain the painful memories because there's lessons that we need to learn.
Oh, that's interesting.
And that we didn't learn them at the time it was going on, so we're holding it on until we learn the lesson. And each time we learn a lesson from a painful experience, the pain becomes less.
But if there's a quicker way to you know, move through the pain story, and also to access that creative self, I think is good.
Right. I think, you know, there's ways to painful incidents to start the healing or transformation immediately. Mm-hmm. But I like psychiatrist Daniel Amen's approach. He calls it creating a positive memory album.
Right.
So that you know, start habitually accessing the positive memories instead of the negative ones.
And that's what the research has shown, that we can actually switch what we access, but we have to there's certain practices to do in order to help with that.
And can you elaborate on the practices?
Well, there's one really simple practice, and that is taking a couple nice deep breaths, closing your eyes, and and you have to have a physical sensation of hand on heart, so it's right hand on the heart center, and then you take a couple minutes, a couple more deep breaths. You take a couple moments to remember a time you felt loved or a positive memory, and you sit in that memory for a while, maybe a minute or two. That's your focus of your meditation. Take another couple nice deep breaths, and then you recall simple and recent things you're thankful for. Mm-hmm. Couple more nice deep breaths, and you remove, you know, your hand, and that's helping to actually switch what memory you access, because we do tend to access more quickly the negative.
Yeah, and I agree with you. What about doing that experience, you know, as a couple or family or even amongst friends?
I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, I do too. Let's say the family goes to the zoo, and then everybody just just chills out and says, okay, you know, we're just going to do just review the visit to the zoo and remember your
I think it's a great idea. Yeah, I was just thinking on the way here, where's those, I don't know what it's called, but where people all of a sudden start dancing spontaneously somewhere like in a mall or something.
Yeah.
So you're talking about bringing that metta, that loving kindness energy into places like, you know, after you've had a positive experience, expanding it, and then maybe actually even sharing it some.
Yeah, I remember going to see a play, a really nice play with a friend, and, you know, I said afterwards, you know, hey, let's just meditate and just kind of review the play from start to...
I love that idea. I'm going to borrow that. Can I borrow that?
Of course. Yeah, write it in a book.
You'll see it in a book. I always tell my sources, so...
Now, the area that you live in is I believe, such a spiritual place, a great community near Madison. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about how the influence of the environment, the physical environment, affects one's physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health?
I think I'm married to a wildlife biologist, and so that has influenced me greatly. And I'm going to forget the name of it. The need for light, natural light. And how a lack of that can really affect our psycho-spiritual...
Oh, seasonal affective disorder?
Well, that disorder, but there's we have to tap into the natural cycles.
Yes.
And how that affects our well-being, our overall physical, mental, and emotional well-being. And oftentimes, the best treatment for somebody is to go tell them to sit by a tree or go for a walk.
Now, I heard, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, But some psychologists, teachers coined a term called nature deficit disorder.
Yes, totally true.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the best treatments for people with autism or ADD is spend
ADD.
time,
Oh, yeah,
spend
especially
time in nature.
This huge, onset of ADD. Everybody's getting overdiagnosed, in my opinion, with ADD. But yes, being outside, getting into the natural rhythms again. We're so out of touch with the natural rhythms.
Well, what I think is great, there's a lot of schools now that are having gardens.
Mm-hmm. Yes, my daughter's school has a garden.
Yeah, and are you working with any school systems or schools?
Oh, I have, off and on. Right at this moment, I'm not, no, because I took about a 5-month sabbatical to work on my first fiction. So I took a break from a lot of different counseling and just started up my next initiation course.
Are you finding that school administrators and teachers are more open to
They're getting more and more open. I do, yes. More receptive to the idea of meditation. When I worked in the 5th grade, volunteered in the 5th grade local school for about 5 years, up until when my daughter was done with 5th grade, elementary school. And I had to be careful about using certain words, like meditation or
hypnosis or visualization.
Or anything like that. And some kid, and I couldn't use the word spiritual, even though it was a journaling class, so creative journaling, which is fine. Spiritual and creative, to me, you can interchange those two words in my mind. But and some of the kids were instructed not to close their eyes when Julie Tallard Johnson was in the classroom.
Yeah. Well, and just acting out of fear, the fear of the unknown.
Well, fear of being brainwashed or something.
Yeah, well, and I believe when people get quiet or get creative, they're taking direction from within.
Absolutely.
Whereas those people have a fear of that.
Well, yeah, the churches, and not all churches, but I'm just saying a lot of organizations do want to control that and not have you open up and have this discover that, I can maybe figure this thing out for myself or in a different way than,
Well, I know there's been great changes in schools with diet, and I think Wisconsin has led the way with Manitowoc ovens, donating food, and when schools change to natural foods and to get rid of the junk foods, the behavior problems drop, attendance goes up, violence drops. But I feel that schools are not going to eventually pick up meditation and find that students are more are scoring better on tests, less social behavioral problems. Yeah. We've got about 45 seconds, Julie. Anything you want to drive home that you've said before? Anything new you want to say?
Go get that journal. Go purchase that journal and show up for the class.
Now, is there a particular kind of store they're better off purchasing, like a hard book?
Like a bookstore or a art store even would have some good large journals.
Any special types of pen you recommend using?
No, whatever you like, whatever makes you happy.
All right. Well, for more information about Julie Tallard Johnson, Infinity Foundation and her Quest talk show, stay tuned to the credits at the end. Until next time, wish you good health, good spirits, and good fortune. Thanks so much, Julie.
Thank you.
For more information about this show, our guests, Infinity Foundation, or any of our other programs, please visit our website, infinityfoundation.org, or call us at 847-831-8828.